Ascendant Volume 1, Unchosen. Chapter 1, A Life Underground. The walls always seemed to inch inward when Elder Hagen spoke. Rust lived in the recycled air, mixed with the stale warmth of too many mouths breathing too close together. His voice dragged through the room like a bad vent fan, sour and impossible to escape. Children filled the benches, shoulder to shoulder, small knees pressed against older legs, little bodies wedged beside boys and girls, nearly ready to be sent away. Near the back, Jesse sat too tall for the room, too old for the lesson, too visible no matter how still he kept himself. Jesse did not belong there anymore. Everyone knew it. 17 was too old for Hagen's benches, but the last selection had failed to place him, and the council had not decided what to do with the mistake. Not yet. Noah looked away before Jesse could catch him staring. If he watched too long, he could almost see himself stretched into that same wrong shape, too old for lessons, too unwanted for work, too visible to be forgotten. 11 waited for him like a fresh line in an elder's ledger. They had always watched the children, always counted them, always written things down behind sealed doors. But 10 was when the counting started to feel personal. Before then, selection was only a word adults used to make children stand straighter. After that, every birthday came with eyes on it. In 2 days, Noah would turn 11. The day should have belonged to him. It never did. Selection always got there first. Selection week was supposed to be an honor. That was what the elders called it anyway, a chance to be named, measured, and given a purpose bright enough to make a child forget he was being sorted. Noah knew better. He had seen too many older children come back from final testing with their shoulders bent, their eyes hollowed out, sleeves still bare where a guild patch should have been. In Brightmoor, purpose was only another word for where adults meant to spend you. Clank, clank, clank. Metal struck the grated floor of the corridor with a weight that did not belong to a runner and a rhythm no work crew used. Every back on the benches seemed to tighten at once. No one moved. Even the youngest children knew better than to turn their heads too fast. Elder Hagen's lecture on the 100th anniversary of the first Earthbreakers broke apart beneath the march. Dates vanished first, then quotas, then Hagen's voice itself ground down beneath the clank coming from the corridor. The doorway darkened as a squad passed the classroom, visible only in pieces, the edge of a black pauldron, a gold-trimmed cape, the hard gleam of a visor that never turned toward them. 5 soldiers, maybe 6. Their steps landed together, each one heavy enough to make the benches tremble beneath the children's legs. A breath later, they were gone, swallowed by the corridor. Their march faded after them, but the room stayed locked in place, full of children waiting for someone else to breathe first. Noah was not built for breaker work. One look at his wrists told him that. The deep vein drills and sonic hammers would shake him loose inside his own skin before they ever carved him into anything useful. That was Devrin's path. Broad-shouldered and already thick through the arms, Devrin Carr looked as if Brightmoor had made room for him in the rock before he ever had to ask. Scout work fit Noah no better. The thought of the deep black, the unlit crawl spaces between sectors, made his breath turn thin in his chest. Calla Lowe belonged there in a way he never would. She moved through Brightmoor like a rumor, quiet enough that people noticed her only after she was already gone. No, he would not be a breaker, choking on rock dust until his lungs turned gray. He would not be a scout, swallowed by the dark, where even breathing felt too loud. He would be one of them. The vanguard walked the surface. They breathed the sky. For one foolish, aching moment, Noah wanted their footsteps to sound like freedom. A boot clipped Noah's shin beneath the bench, hard enough to make him flinch. Beside him, Devrin shot him a look and jerked his chin toward the front. Elder Hagen was staring straight at Noah. The dull gold pin at his collar caught the lantern light, a closed book bound in chain, and his face had settled into the tired disappointment he saved for children who made him repeat himself. From the front row, Calla let out a soft snicker. "Mr. Drayden," Elder Hagen said, his voice dry enough to scrape, "since the history of our survival is so dull, perhaps you can enlighten us, or you and Mr. Carr will be hauling water reclamation tanks until third bell." Noah glanced at Devrin. Beneath the bench, his friend's fist twitched beside his knee, the closest thing to celebration he dared risk. Noah huffed through his nose, a dry little laugh he caught before it became sound. Of course Devrin would get excited about hauling shifts. He claimed the strain built character. Noah was pretty sure it mostly built calluses, sore wrists, and gave adults one more excuse to point at heavy things and call it discipline. Sector 1 sat close enough to the surface that older workers liked to joke a man could poke a drill through the ceiling and let the sky leak in. Noah hated that joke. No one he knew had ever seen the sky, and the men who laughed about it always did so with their eyes down, as if even pretending too hard might bring the rock down on them. Brightmoor had never suffered a breach, so no vanguard stayed there. The closest Noah ever came to the surface was the passing squads, scarred armor, gold trim, boots striking the causeway in perfect rhythm. They never stopped. They never looked young. Even behind their visors, something about them seemed worn down to the bone. "The answer, Mr. Drayden?" Elder Hagen pressed. Noah blinked. Whatever Hagen had asked was gone, buried somewhere under hydro-loop ratios, fungal yield quotas, and the dull scrape of dates he was supposed to remember. They never spoke of what mattered, never explained what had happened to the world, or why they were truly down here. This year made the silence harder to ignore. The 100th anniversary was supposed to be a celebration, but Noah had never understood why a celebration needed so many rules about what children were not allowed to ask. Hagen exhaled through his nose and repeated the question slowly enough for the whole room to feel it. "What was the name of the first Earthbreaker, and when did he appear?" A small, sharp snort slipped through Noah's nose before he could stop it. He caught Devrin's eye, and Devrin's grin came slow, dangerous, and delighted. That should have been warning enough. Instead, Noah stood. Calla turned fully in her seat. Her eyebrows lifted, and she gave one quick shake of her head before mouthing, "Don't be stupid." Noah's grin widened. Above the chalkboard, the faded anniversary banner sagged from one loose corner, its painted letters cracked by damp. Noah looked at it, then at Hagen. "The first Earthbreaker's name was Alistair Cutler," he said, his voice clearer than he expected, "and he appeared the moment the rock beneath our feet became more valuable than the sky above our heads." Muffled gasps and choked laughter rolled through the room. Even Jessie cracked a smile. Hagen's expression did not change. Noah could have stolen the elders' finest robes and dragged them through the market square, and Hagen would have watched him with that same pale, sunken stare. The old man only settled deeper behind his desk, like a slab lowering into place. "You know the drill, Drayden," Hagen said. "Reclamation tanks, after class." Noah dropped back onto his seat, still feeling the heat of every stare in the room. Beside him, Devrin leaned in and pushed a closed fist forward. Noah bumped it without hesitation. The rest of class crawled by in the stale heat, each minute dragging through the room behind Hagen's voice. He kept talking, but the words slipped past Noah and left nothing behind. The corridor kept pulling at him, back to the place where the vanguard had passed, to the doorway that still looked darker than the wall around it. When the dismissal bell rang, the classroom broke apart in a scrape of benches and muttered relief. Hagen caught Noah before he reached the aisle, tipped his chin toward the service corridor, and waited. Noah gave him his most innocent look. It died somewhere between them. By the time Noah reached the stacks of empty reclamation jugs, Devrin already had the carry rig across his shoulders, a long metal rod hooked with 10 empty containers that knocked together whenever he shifted. Full, the load would pull close to 100 pounds. Devrin looked pleased about it. Beyond Devrin, on the dry stone ledge everyone still called Paradise Falls, Calla sat cross-legged above the crowd. People said water had once poured over that edge in one broad underground sheet, back when the central pumps still worked and adults had better stories to tell. Noah had only ever known it as cracked stone, rust stains, dead pipe mouths jutting from the wall, and a high place where children climbed when they wanted height, quiet, or a way to watch without being watched. At 12, Calla was only a year older than Noah and a few inches taller, slim in a way that made her look easier to break than she was. Her long blonde hair, usually pulled into a tight knot, had come loose over one shoulder. In the dim lantern glow, her blue eyes looked pale and watchful, taking in more than most people knew how to hide. Other people missed the small things. Noah did not. Calla's smile came half a second late when someone said her parents' names. Her fingers tightened whenever stone shifted overhead. Before she looked at a face, her eyes found every exit. The Sector Gamma tunnel collapse had taken her parents 6 years ago. After the accident, Calla spent a year under Noah's mother's roof. That year taught her how to smile again. It did not teach her how to stop listening for falling stone. Years ago, in a maintenance shaft that tasted of rust and cold water, Noah had found Calla curled against the wall with her hands clamped over her ears. He had not known what to say, so he sat beside her on the cold floor, close enough for their shoulders to almost touch, and let the dark do the talking for both of them. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The sound came from deeper in the shaft, steady and angry. They followed it through the damp stink of pipe sweat and old stone until they found a boy hammering at a thick slab of rock as if the stone had personally wronged him. At first, Noah thought he was older. He looked older by a mile. Broad shoulders, shirt soaked through with sweat, jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. Then the boy turned, and beneath all the grime and effort was a face no older than Noah's. His eyes were wild with work, not fear. The boy looked at Noah, then at Calla, then at the hammer in his own hand, as if he had only just remembered they were standing there. "You got a spare hammer?" he asked. Noah blinked. "What?" "Spare hammer," the boy said, nodding toward the stone. "This one's lonely." Calla stared at him, still pale and shaking, until a laugh broke out of her like it had slipped past every locked door she had left. The boy grinned, like that settled everything. "I'm Devrin." Devrin shifted the carry rig with a low grunt, and the memory broke apart. Noah shot one last glance toward Calla. Her fingers worried the cuff of her sleeve, a small, nervous habit he never missed. Still, the old scene clung to him. Devrin's wild grin in the dark, Calla's startled laugh, the ridiculous question that had somehow stayed with them long after the hammer stopped ringing. "Let's get it!" Devrin shouted, far too eager. "You got room on that thing?" Noah asked, holding out his single jug. "Stone, take it. This is my light day." Devrin grinned. "One load, then we're off for the whole week. For the selection." Noah's smile crooked sideways. "You say that like the elders are handing out cake instead of deciding our entire future." Devrin only looked more pleased. Exactly. Future cake. A laugh started in Noah's chest, warm and stupid, but the word selection dragged it back down. His smile faded before he could hold it in place. A whole week off should have sounded like freedom. Instead, it made every step feel counted. Noah fell in beside Devrin, his lone jug bouncing against his thigh. The grated walkway rattled under their boots, each step knocking hollow through the service corridor. Calla had already claimed part of the week, whispering about a new tunnel the breakers had cleared, but even that felt borrowed. 7 days off did not mean 7 days free. It meant tests, measured breaths, watched mistakes, and elders marking down every place a child could be used. After that, they would decide who was useful, who was not, and who got sent back among the unchosen before chosen had time to feel like anything but a borrowed word. "You ready for the physicals?" Devrin asked, bouncing on the balls of his feet. "I heard they upped the strength test this year. Timed gear haul and a sled push." "Sounds thrilling," Noah said. "It's not supposed to be thrilling. It's supposed to weed out the weak." Devrin puffed out his chest and could barely keep still. First year of eligibility, and he acted like he already had a gray and white breaker patch stitched to his shirt, crossed hammers over a blast charge. Noah's hand tightened around the handle of his jug. The elders had passed over Calla last year, and Noah still could not make that feel true. She was born for scout work. She could find a way through the dark without a blue and black compass on her sleeve to prove it. Wearing a mark you had not earned was a punishable lie in Brightmoor, but denying Calla the patch felt like a bigger one. If that made her weak, then the word did not mean anything. The line at the primary well snaked back 10 deep, every child holding council-issued empties that knocked against knees and ankles. A pump clerk with red-rimmed eyes waved them forward one at a time, as if the delay belonged to the children and not the dry pipes. When their number was called, Devrin heaved the 10 canisters onto the filling platform and opened the valve. Water struck the bottom of the first empty canister with a hollow clang, then dulled as the level rose. Once the last one was filled, Devrin shouldered the heavy rig with a grunt. "You ever wonder how much water the Vanguard gets?" "More than us," Noah said, filling his own lone jug halfway. He looked into it, shrugged, and twisted the cap on tight. "Yeah, bet they don't gotta wait in line either," Devrin said. By the time the wells closed, children would have hauled enough water through Brightmoor to keep a family alive for nearly a year. Noah did not know where the Vanguard got theirs, but he knew it did not come from a clerk with red eyes, a rattling line, and a valve that made children wait for every drop. Noah started after Devrin with the jug swinging at his side. "Half full," the pump clerk snapped. His red-rimmed stare dropped to the jug, lingered on the low water line, then climbed back to Noah's face. "You think I'm marking that as a full pull?" "Back in line." Heat crawled up Noah's neck as a few children behind him muttered. He dragged the jug back under the spout and watched the water climb the rest of the way, pretending not to hear every hollow glug. Devrin talked about becoming a breaker the entire walk back, the heavy rig creaking against his shoulders like it bothered everyone but him. "It's my calling, Dre." Noah made a noise that could pass for agreement and switched his own jug from one hand to the other every few steps. Devrin's certainty had a weight to it, solid as the rig across his shoulders, and it had come from Gunner Carr as surely as his broad frame had. Master foreman of the Breaker Guild, Gunner spoke about stone the way other men spoke about blood. If the elders failed to name Devrin a breaker, Noah could almost picture Gunner planting blasting caps beneath every council flat and calling it a structural concern. The thought pulled a silent laugh through Noah's nose, but it did not last. The wrongness of the week pressed back in before the smile could settle. Selection always made adults careful. This year it had made the elders scared. Adults thought children did not notice fear. They were wrong. Noah noticed the smiles that arrived too quickly and vanished before they reached the cheeks, He noticed voices dropping half a breath too late, fingers brushing collar badges as if rank could keep stone overhead and order underneath. After a while, he started collecting those little failures the way other boys collected scrap. Even the elders held council daily now, vanishing behind sealed doors and coming out with their mouths pinched flat. Near the east corridor, Noah had overheard two of them arguing beneath the market noise, their whispers sharpened by all the things they were trying not to say. One saw him and offered a smile that was all teeth. The other turned his badge inward with his thumb and walked faster. Rockslide Quiet had a shape to it. First the waiting, then the dust, then everyone pretending they had not heard the mountain shift. "So, you and Calla checking out that new path tomorrow?" Devrin asked. "Yeah," Noah said, still hearing the elders' lowered voices beneath the market noise. Devrin's grin arrived all at once, wide and awful. "You ever gonna ask her?" Noah's foot came down wrong, and water slapped the inside of his jug. "Ask her what?" "Come on, man." Devrin bumped him with an elbow. "The whole settlement can see it." A quick look over Noah's shoulder showed only the usual market crush: children with jugs, workers with tired faces, traders pretending not to listen. "She's like my sister." Devrin let out a short, sharp laugh. "Bullshit. Because she lived in your flat for a year? That doesn't make her family. It makes you lucky." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You know how she's always watching people?" "Yeah, so?" "Noah, she's always watching you." The jug handle bit deeper into Noah's palm. His tongue pressed uselessly behind his teeth while the market carried on around him. Boots on grate, water sloshing in canisters, voices rising and falling like nothing had changed. A man's voice cut across the causeway, raw with anger. Beyond the rows of trader stalls, Elder Hagen stood toe-to-toe with a man Noah did not recognize. Built like a breaker, broad and thick through the shoulders, the stranger carried himself differently, with the hard, measuring patience of someone used to weighing goods, debts, and men. Their argument had drawn too much attention. Mid-sentence, the trader stopped. His attention moved past Hagen, past the stalls, and found Noah across the causeway. For a few uncomfortable heartbeats, Noah felt weighed with everything else. Whatever the trader said next was too low for Noah to catch, but it was sharp enough to tighten Hagen's jaw. The man turned on his heel and vanished into the crowd, leaving the argument hanging behind him like smoke. "What was that?" Noah murmured. Noah turned to Devrin, but his friend was already bent over the rig, checking the straps and wiping a smudge from one of the jugs with his sleeve. The world could be ending, and Devrin would find something to maintain. The trader had vanished. Bodies shifted into the empty space he left behind. Voices rose to cover the argument. A cartwheel clattered over a seam in the stone. Whatever Hagen had been arguing about, whatever the trader had found when he measured Noah from across the causeway, Brightmoor swallowed it. Devrin straightened and nudged the rig forward with his boot. "Come on! Calla's going to skin us if we're late." Noah followed, but the feeling stayed with him. Not a look, not quite a warning, just the sharp pressure of being weighed and set aside for later. They met Calla at the edge of the market square, or would have if she had not stepped out from between two scaffold posts before either of them noticed her. Devrin cursed and stumbled back half a step, nearly clipping a passing child with his shoulder. Calla only smiled and lifted one shoulder. "You walk loud." Her nose wrinkled faintly, as if the whole market had announced them before sight ever had to. The market came at Noah in pieces, fungus hissing in oil, a smith's hammer striking iron, 100 voices trying to bargain over one another. The air was thick enough to taste, sour with hot metal, damp bodies, and old cooking grease. Selection Week traders had turned the square into a maze of stalls, their lanterns swaying against the cavern walls and throwing the same name over him again and again: Cutler and Sons Ore, Cutler Supply, Cutler Salvage. Alistair Cutler's name had sounded dangerous enough in Hagen's classroom. Out here, it looked worse, stamped across half the market beneath the same rust-red mark: a chisel splitting a grey stone seam. Cutler owned the rock, which meant Cutler owned the backs that broke it. Jesse Lacey moved through the crowd nearby, unchosen in name only. On his cuff, the Lacey crest caught the lantern light, 3 linked silver rings circling a blue water drop, clean enough to look untouched by the tunnel air. Money clung to him the same way, a spotless coat no one dared smear. It kept people from looking too closely at the failure Brightmoor had stamped beneath his family name. "You ever wonder what it's like up there?" Calla asked without facing him, her attention still following the market's movement. She did not have to raise her voice. Somehow, Calla always found the seam in the noise. Both boys turned. Calla never talked about the surface. She did not waste breath on impossible things. But the question stayed between them, larger than the market, larger than Hagen's lessons, larger than anything Noah knew how to answer. He had wondered every day. "My uncle says there's no ceiling," she said, her voice thinner now, aimed at the dark above the lanterns. "Says you can see forever." Devrin laughed. "That's stupid." Calla's mouth tightened. The grin left Devrin's face. He suddenly found the latch on his side tool interesting enough to worry with his thumb. "I bet the sky's bigger than we think," Noah said. The words came out softer than he meant, almost like a prayer. Above them, the cavern roof sweated in the lantern glow, massive and low and real. "What does that even mean?" Devrin scoffed. Noah faced him, heat rising under his ribs. "Look at this place. The main cavern is what, a few miles across?" "Something like that," Calla said. "And it feels huge, right? But what if it's not?" Noah leaned forward, lowering his voice as the market pressed and bargained around them. "What if it only feels big because we've never stood anywhere bigger? My dad once told me the surface goes on and on. No walls, no tunnels, just open." Calla rested one shoulder against a scaffolding beam. "I heard the wind can pick people up and throw them." Devrin staggered backward, arms windmilling, boots scraping over stone as if the wind had him by the shirt. Noah bit down on the laugh before it could escape. "My uncle told me that," Calla insisted, but laughter caught in her voice now, rare and real enough to make Noah's chest ache. He wanted the wind then, though he had never felt it. Wanted air that had not been scrubbed through a machine. Wanted to feel small without feeling trapped. "Doesn't matter," Devrin said, dropping his arms as if the invisible wind had gotten bored with him. "It's not like we'll ever see it." "We could," Noah said, quiet but firm. Devrin snorted. "Oh, sure. We'll just stroll past the guards, through the restricted sectors, and pop a hatch. Easy." "The Vanguard does it," Noah said, his voice tightening. "They were kids once, same as us." "Yeah, and they're not nobodies from Sector 1, Devrin shot back. "They get picked, trained. There's never been a Vanguard from Brightmoor. Not ever." He said it hard, like the words could keep Noah from wanting something stupid enough to hurt him. Noah turned to Calla, needing one person there to leave the door open. "What do you think?" She did not answer right away. Her fingers found the cuff of her sleeve and worried the seam until the fabric bunched beneath her nails. For a moment, all of her seemed aimed past the lanterns, past the pipes and hanging walkways, to the old seams overhead, where every story about the sky began. Behind them, a smith's hammer still rang somewhere in the market. Nearby, a trader called prices over the shuffle of bodies. The square kept moving, but it had stopped feeling close. "I don't know," she said softly, "but I'd like to see it. Just once." Her fingers left her cuff. "The sky," she said. "The stars." Stars. The word felt illegal, too bright for Brightmoor and too old for Elder Hagen's lessons. Noah had heard it before, but only as a dead thing from history, a word adults used when they meant gone. Calla said it like something that still existed, and something small and stubborn answered inside him. "Someday." "Exactly," Noah said, before the word could leave him behind. "We could find a way." Devrin let out a long, theatrical sigh. "If you're so curious, why don't you just ask one of them next time a squad passes through?" Across the causeway, the place where the squad had passed stood empty now. No black armor, no gold-trimmed capes, no bootsteps hard enough to make children hold their breath. The vanguard never stopped, never looked at anyone, never spoke. Every story about them bent toward the same truth no one said aloud. The surface was not safe. Men went up wearing armor and came back wearing silence. Calla kept her attention on the empty causeway, quiet long enough that Noah wondered if the market had lost her. Then the corner of her mouth lifted. Devrin caught it. His shoulders rose a fraction. "No." Calla turned that small smile on him. "I didn't say anything." "You're thinking something. That's not illegal yet." "It is when you think like that." The tightness in Noah's chest loosened despite himself. Calla nodded toward the causeway. "Next time they pass through," he asks. Devrin stared at her. "I was not being serious." With the causeway already cleared, Noah's thoughts followed the squad into whatever tunnels Marcus Hale and his men allowed armed strangers to use. Every restricted corridor in Brightmoor had a Hale somewhere near it, at a gate, beside a ledger, close enough to a lock to pretend the lock was the same thing as order. Between the elders and the Hales, tunnel access felt less like moving through the settlement and more like trying to find a crack in the ceiling. For one stupid second, Noah could see it anyway. Calla finding the right corridor, Devrin complaining the whole way, and himself standing before a silent vanguard soldier, asking what the sky looked like. Devrin caught the change in him before Noah could bury it. "Noah, don't you dare start believing her." Calla tilted her head. "Too late." The third bell rang before Noah could answer, 3 low strikes rolling through the market and into the tunnels beyond. Around them, stalls began to fold. Workers gathered their tools. Tired hands and sharper voices pulled children away from the square. Calla turned first toward the dim passage that led home. Devrin muttered something about being late, and the 3 of them finally split apart. The glow fixtures dimmed to mimic night. Brightmoor settled into its usual failing quiet. The uneven drone of a struggling generator, the groan of stressed metal, the thin rattle of pipes that should have been replaced years ago. Noah sat on the edge of his cot in his mother's empty flat, the kind of empty that had learned his shape and kept it. The letter from his father waited on the small table beside him, folded along the same tired creases as every year before. He ran his thumb over the worn edges. Another year, another birthday missed. Paper rasped softly beneath his fingers as he unfolded it, though he did not read a word. Every line already lived in him. His father always wrote as if someone stood close enough to count the scratches in his pen strokes. Simple words, careful spaces, nothing that could be used against him. What he left out filled the room more than what he said. Noah lay back, and the rock ceiling pressed itself into his thoughts. The vanguard knew the truth of the surface. Maybe they protected Brightmoor from whatever waited above. Maybe they protected the truth from everyone below. A low, distant boom rolled through Brightmoor, so faint it felt more like pressure than sound. Noah came upright with the blanket twisted in his fists, breath locked in his throat until his lungs began to burn. Nothing answered him. The old earth groaned around the flat, and beneath it the generator kept up its sickly hum. When he lay back down, the glow fixture flickered hard enough to make the room unfamiliar. His cot shrank into shadow. His father's letter lay pale on the table, too bright in the bad light. For a moment, the whole flat seemed to shift a few inches deeper into the dark, and the cold stayed under Noah's skin. Maybe it was nothing, a failing pipe, a bad brace, some old part of Brightmoor finally giving up. But if the tunnel was going to fall, Noah would not wait beneath it. He would walk toward the sound.